Retro.
Hello there. This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Hey, this is Catherine Tabor, Senator Padme Amidala from Star Wars The Clone Wars.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armor in The Mandalorian.
And you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust.
Their behavior is continually unexpected.
So uncivilized.
This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keeley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And wait for it. We are celebrating 5 years and 800 episodes of Podcast Stardust on this episode.
Woo! Go us.
But before we get into the festivities, Jay, this is where we tell everyone where they can find us around the internet. So please do so.
Absolutely. So we can be very easily found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right. The disc is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. And we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. I think I've said that 800 times now. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we are. The actual 5th anniversary of the show was about a week ago at this point. We normally celebrate the anniversary in November over the course of the month, talking about our favorite things that happened in the past year of the podcast and favorite things we've covered, etc. But just as a nice synergy we have here with 5 years and 800 episodes coming in at about the same time. So we're kind of getting a jump on that. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk a bit about what we've done in the past 100 episodes. And then we're going to look ahead to the future and make some predictions about what we might be covering in the next 5 years and 800 episodes of the show. But before we do that, I thought it would be fun to kind of look up and see how the number 800 is important in Star Wars. Because, Jay, we know that numbers are big in Star Wars. There's some that just keep getting used over and over and over again.
Right.
TK421 and 327. Yeah, 1138. All those type of things. Surprisingly, there's not much that has to do with 800. Most of the 800 references that I found on Wikipedia are like part numbers that came out of role-playing game guides. So like a bundle of wires or a barrel for a blaster or something like that. But there were a few that kind of stood out and are a bit more important. The first of which is that in canon, in the year 800 BBY, the planet Rothana is sold to Quat Drive Yards, and that ends up becoming a very important manufacturing center for them. Showed up in a number of stories over the years.
Right.
Then the Harvester was an AXS 800 light freighter. I'm not sure how people are going to be familiar with that ship, but that was the ship that Luke Skywalker and his brief love interest, Nakari, used in Heir to the Jedi, which was one of the first novels in our current canon. And not particularly great, if I'm being honest. Do you remember that book?
Not a whole lot, quite honestly. So, I guess it didn't make that big of an impression on me. I mean, I remember it, but not.
Yeah, it was originally written. It was originally written to be part of the expanded universe before that got reset, but it hadn't been published, so they carried it forward. And it's fine. Like I said, Nakari was a early love interest for Luke. She unfortunately does not survive the novel. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but it's been out for 9 years. So that's on you if you haven't read it. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those that, after we had gotten some other things, it just wasn't a great addition as far as I was concerned. But then this one completely went over my head until I dug in there. But for 800 years, trained Jedi, I have my own counsel I will keep as to who is ready. So yeah, thank you, Yoda. That is the most prominent use of the number 800 in Star Wars that I could find.
Right. When 800 years old you reach, look as good you will not.
Isn't that 900?
Is it 900? Oh, yeah, it is 900.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be around
we'll
for
save
another
that
100
one for
episodes.
episode 900.
You're right. You're right.
So it's been a busy past 100 episodes of the show. I was a little surprised about all the things that we'd covered when I went back and looked at. I mean, we've done a news episode just about every single week. A few weeks we took off because we'd recorded episodes in advance to accommodate travel and the like. But, some of the things that I'm going to highlight, we had 2/3 of the season of the Bad Batch. We've done 8 episodes of our Phantom Menace series in that time. We've covered 6 issues of Phase 3 of the High Republic comics. We talked about several novels in the High Republic, including things like Defy the Storm by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland. We've discussed a number of episodes of the Clone Wars, the first 10 episodes of Season 1, and then some other random episodes from our Hondo Naka series and other series that we've done. We did the Maul Conquers Mandalore arc as well. A number of comics such as Star Wars Visions. We discussed Tales of the Empire. We went back in time and talked about Darth Vader number 18 by Charles Soule. We covered the Princess Leia miniseries, the Captain Phasma miniseries. Other books included The Living Force. We did the Phantom Menace novelization, the Princess Leia series. I think I mentioned that one already. The Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy, and the Padawan's Price audiobook. Not to mention we covered Rebel Moon Part 2 because that was Star Wars adjacent and originally intended to be a Star Wars movie. So, of all of that, and the entirety of the Acolyte came in that 100 episodes too.
Right.
So a lot of things there, and like I said, some of that was material that we brought forward from the past to discuss on this podcast because it predated the podcast. But a lot of it was, contemporary with the podcast. But of all the things we talked about, what were some of your favorites?
Well, I have to say, we were talking about this in the news episode that as far as the comics are concerned, there's a lot of the comics that I probably would not have picked up had we not discussed it on the show. And so there's things like, it kind of came up like the Captain Phasma novel or comic that I didn't even know existed, because we were talking about the novel and, what would we like to see? The Princess Leia comic, all of those different types of comics that I just really treasure now, having part of my, fandom life, if you will, that I never would have done otherwise. And then, of course, just all of the things that we've done with the Clone Wars and just getting, back into that and revisiting that and just being able to relive that, because I can never get enough Clone Wars. But, it's just so hard to pick one thing because, I love Rebel Moon, I will say. I mean, even though that wasn't Star Wars, it was Star Wars adjacent, and I just love that movie. And then, of course, some of our fun little riffs that we've had, like on the Ask Me Anything Star Wars, because that really does generate a lot of really, authentic discussion. Not that we don't have authentic discussions, but, it's just kind of, we get to riff on a lot of things. And I really, really do love that. And of course, having our guests on. So I know I'm copping out, but I mean, I can't really pick just one favorite thing. And that's why, we love doing it.
Yeah, stick a pin in that and we can come back and talk about some more things specifically here in just a second. Yeah, for me, one of the things that you mentioned, the guests, the favorite thing that we do on the show is our year-long series on one of the Star Wars movies. We started that back in 2020 when we reviewed The Empire Strikes Back. We divided it up into 12 segments and had a guest on each month to discuss that. And we've picked a movie with a milestone anniversary every year since then. And of course, this year being the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace, it made it the obvious choice. And so getting the guests on, unfortunately, we had a few snafus with getting guests for a couple of those segments, but we just had a fantastic episode with Craig Dickinson and Tom Gross. Covering the first part of the battle that's in Act 3 of the movie, and that was a lot of fun. But just that's the best time to have guests on to and then to focus that tightly on 10 to 15 minutes of the movie and dive into the details. And when you're only watching those 10 to 15 minutes, noticing things that you never noticed before or connections to other content, and sometimes how that segment became the inspiration for something that came later in Star Wars has been a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Hmm. And then, you mentioned the Clone Wars. That's also been fun. We started the year with the Hondo Anaka series because, well, frankly, we wanted to talk about Hondo and we couldn't decide where to go. So we talked about, a few of the episodes he appeared in, and then a book that he was in, and we'd already talked about all the Rebels, which he was in. And then later this year, we got stuck for a topic for a Monday. And I made the executive decisions like, okay, we're doing it. We're going back and we're just going to review all the Clone Wars. And what's been fantastic about that, Jay, is that, we've pointed this out a number of times, how far the animation in the Clone Wars has come
Hmm.
since season 1. It was fine then. And if that's what it had been like forever, we would have been probably happy with that. But wow, has it evolved? And
Yes.
the characters, the way they're portrayed in the Clone Wars also evolved over the 7 series that we've gotten of that. Just thinking about Ahsoka alone, we've commented on this in a number of episodes, how she really went from being someone that not a lot of people were fond of to like one of the biggest Star Wars characters of all time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've really treasured that because there's been so many things about just those episodes that we've even watched recently
Mm-hmm.
that, you completely forget about, but they really do have a lasting impact on the storytelling as a whole. And so it's just great to get back into them.
Yeah. I wish I had thought to write down some of the episode numbers where we discuss these things, because I kind of go back and visit some of the. But what's another one that you stood out to you?
Well, the books, just specifically the Defy the Storm was probably one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite books that we've reviewed for quite a long time, quite honestly. And I really did enjoy the Padawan's Pride audiobook that we
Mm-hmm.
just did. I got into that one big time. I really did.
I
So
was a
I
real
just thought that
surprise.
those were, yeah, I know. It was great. And of course, Tales of the Empire. I mean, come on, my girl, fourth sister, Lynn Rakish. Come on, she's amazing.
You're the only one that focuses on her
I
as the
know. I
as
know.
Barris as the main character of that arc.
It's the fourth
But
sister arc. I'm sorry, y'all. It just is.
uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, no, I hear you. One of the things that also surprised me in the past 100 episodes was the Star Wars Vision Takashi Okazaki #1 that we discussed.
That was so good too.
And one of the things that, really impressed me about it was a fantastically nice, brief story, about the Ronin and his quest to defeat these Sith masters out there. And it's not that I disliked the Ronin novel that we got, what was it, a year or two ago after the first season of Visions. It's just that Visions is based on, anime. And it's
Mhm.
supposed to be much more of a visual thing than it is a written page type of a thing. And I think that was a much better medium to tell a story about that character. And I just loved it. It's how he came to acquire his droid,
Right.
uh, and all that. And, it leads us into the events of that, that very first episode of Visions as well. But I was really taken with that story.
Yeah, it was very well done. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Any of the others catching your attention?
Well, I gotta tell you, I mean, we could sit here and I could go through every single one of these because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is what we do. I mean, this is what we love to do. So it's hard to really pick specific things
Mm-hmm.
out of this because I've treasured every single one of them for, different reasons. But it was fun to do the Phantom Menace novelization as well.
Yeah.
Just because the fact that, as we talked through that and we got to compare and contrast, what we saw in the movie versus what we got in the book, and what kind of a read between the lines kind of a thing does that allow us to do with that? That was just a heck of a lot of fun to do too.
Yeah. I agree. I agree completely. And then the other, I guess, before we move on to the future here, thing I'd like to, that was with Ross Holliman that we did. But then
Yes.
we did a series of episodes back in June to cover my vacation. And we recorded these all in advance with guests that we'd had on for various things.
Hmm.
Several of them were guests for Phantom Menace episodes, but we did the state of Star Wars on Disney Plus. We did the state of the
Hmm.
High Republic with Greg Cass. I think Disney Plus was with Colby Mead. We did Cap and Star came on and talked about the state of animation. Disney, Star Wars
Right.
animation, our favorite animated characters. We had relegated that one to like they had to have originated in animation. Some of those were just a lot of fun to do, to take that really big look at Star Wars and be able to talk about topics that came from a lot of different sources all in the one episode.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one
Mhm.
other thing too, as far as like our different episodes, we have our monthly World Between Worlds feature, which is our lifestyle and fashion roundup. And that's always
Mhm.
so much fun for me to do, even though it's also very tempting from the
Mm.
pocketbook standpoint. But it's just really cool to see all of the ways that Star Wars permeates our world, whether it be in clothing or in jewelry or in just the individual ways that people express themselves, from home goods and things like candles and, even artwork and the like, that I just think is amazing. And the small businesses that are out there that are basically just literally following their dreams and
Mhm.
allowing us to play in their sandbox for a little while and enjoy some of their things that they come up with. So I've just really treasured that, because I've also gotten to know a lot of these small businesses, especially these women business owners. And I know it's been over 100 episodes ago, but we've had some of the business owners on World Between Worlds, which I need to do that again. I have a couple on my list that I need to ask. And so I would love to do that again. But it's just been so great to make those connections. And then, I do have people that'll tell me, that's the one I look forward to every month. And not that they're not listening to the other ones, but I have had a couple people specifically tell me, like, when are you doing World Between Worlds again? So that's really cool to know that people are really appreciating that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It also gives my wife gift ideas, so it's also good for
Hey, there you
that.
go.
I've
Ta-da.
benefited from these episodes on a number of
You're
occasions.
welcome.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. If you're new to Podcast Stars and you haven't caught any of these discussions, the good news is that most podcatchers keep at least the last 100 to 200 episodes. They're available through those things. So they're easier to find on your phone if you want to go back and check them out. If not, then I would suggest retrozap.com. We have our own page over there. Every single one of the episodes is available through that platform and not too difficult to find. So yeah, definitely check that out. Or, go through our Discord channel and then drop us a message about, if there's one that you're looking for and I can help you find it. I'd love to direct you to it. Okay. So
Please
let's look.
subscribe. That's another thing. Please subscribe.
Yep.
That's big.
Definitely encourage you to do that again as we get towards the end of the show. But so let's take a look at the future here, Jay. We've just finished 800 episodes and 5 years of the podcast. What's something, and we can take turns here giving ideas, but what's one thing you think you expect to happen in the next 5 years in 800 episodes?
Oh, just one?
Well, we're going to take turns. You'll get an
Uh,
opportunity to share more.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as movies go, I mean, we've got the Mando and Grogu. I
Mhm.
mean, come on, that is so exciting. And
Mhm.
then the Ray movie. So I just think being able to get back into the theater again and to
Mhm.
get to see a Star Wars movie on the big screen is something that I'm so looking forward to in
Mhm.
the next 5 years and 800 episodes.
Okay.
So what about you?
So I'm going to make you make a prediction here. It is
Ah,
currently the day of recording this is October 24th. And so this will be coming out on the 28th. By October 28th, 2029, how many Star Wars movies will have been released in theaters?
by 2029?
That's
Oh
5 years
gosh.
from now. That'll be the
Okay.
next day. So
So yeah,
yeah,
that's
from
true.
now till then,
Hmm. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go out on a limb and say 3.
I think you're right. Because we're gonna get Mandalorian Grogu in 2026.
Right, we
They've
know
been
that one for
talking
sure.
they've been talking about the new Jedi Order, the Rey movie, also in 2026. But then they've been talking about, every other year after that. So 2028. So I think I think it's likely to be one in 2026, possibly two that year, one in 2028, and then we won't get another one until 2030. But it's possible the Ray movie gets pushed back to 2027. That's my prediction on that.
Mhm. Mhm. So out of the ones that we've talked about on the
Mhm.
show, we've got Taika Waititi's movie, we have, Dave Filoni's movie, those types of things.
Mhm.
Do you have one that you would like to see released before another?
Well, yeah, I basically, yeah, we're gonna get the Mandalorian Grogu movie. That one's in production. That one's coming May
Right.
2026. I can't see them delaying it for any reason, unless a catastrophe hits. And then I think they are very committed. They've got Daisy Ridley on board for it. That the new Jedi Order movie will come out after that. My prediction, and I'm totally good with this, is that we will get the Mandoverse movie by Dave Filoni.
Mhm.
Will be the 2028 production that
Mhm.
comes out there. That'll give them an opportunity to get through season 2 of Ahsoka, and then an additional seasons of other related shows, and get them to get all the characters in place to take on Thrawn, which is what I'm assuming is going to happen in that movie.
Mhm. No, I'm with you. I think that's the one that it's gonna be too. The third one is gonna be, uh, Dave Filoni's movie for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, here's my prediction for the next 800 episodes in 5 years. Off of the success of the High Republic, we will continue to get a sporadic publishing in that era, in the High Republic era, but they will do a similar initiative with the Old Republic and start telling us stories set even farther past in the past, and about that'll basically have the galaxy as we know it like limited to areas of the core and the inner rim, and we'll have more primitive hyperspace technology, more Jedi, more Sith for them to fight, and yeah, that'll be an upcoming publishing initiative.
Oh, I like it.
Hmm.
I like it a lot.
If they did that, would you be interested in seeing them revisit Darth Bane, or would you just like to leave that story as it is in Legends?
Oh, you know what? That's such a catch-22 kind of a question because it's perfect the way it is right now,
Hmm.
honestly.
Hmm.
And, that's one of those things that, as we talked about before, that's a series I revisit every summer and I
Hmm.
listen to it on audiobook and it's just my tradition.
Hmm.
So in some ways, you don't want to like poke the bear kind of thing. You don't want to
Hmm.
mess with perfection. But then again, I mean, if they did it well, oh my gosh, like that it could be absolutely incredible. So I'm a little I'm kind of teeter-tottering on that one. I do love it the way that it is though. But what do you think?
Um, I think what I'd like to see is stories that are set before Bane, like significantly before Bane, so that I know people feel differently about this, but I just assume keep the headcanon that was the story of Bane. I know
Yes.
they've done some minor things that have kind of contradicted little bits of Bane's story in the current canon, but go back another 500 years before that for your old Republic storytelling,
Mhm.
and give us Sith and Jedi fighting then. So you don't even need to tread on Darth Bane. You don't even need to worry about getting into the Rule of Two, and give us stories then. I think
Mhm.
that could be fantastic, a great way of doing
No,
it.
I agree. I think that'd be great.
Hmm. So give me another prediction.
Okay, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and talk about animation,
Okay.
new animation, because we've been teased that there's some jobs out there in Star Wars animation, but we haven't yet seen any hard, fast news. So I'm gonna say that there's gonna be a new Tales of the something and I would like to see, talking about Old Republic, actually, Tales of the Old Republic, something of that nature. Or, and I know that the Mandalorian, the Mandoverse, has been tapped into quite a few times. We were just talking about that with the movie, but I do still think that that would be a fun, tales of kind of a thing. So
Hmm.
that's one of my predictions for animation. And then Resistance Part 2. No kidding.
No, definitely not. If you were going to do Tales of the Mandiverse, which characters would you pick for it?
Okay, so I would go into like Republic Commando stuff and
Mhm.
go back into some of the origins of those characters and go back into
Mhm.
like Jaster
Well, you really get
Mareel
2.
and
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, you basically get they basically set up as 2. This last
Mhm.
time, it was Morgan Elsbeth, and then it was the fourth
Poor
sister.
sister. Thank
I'm
you.
going to indulge you on that one.
Thank you,
And
Dennis.
those told a story. So, and the point is that they've got stories that relate in some way. So you got 2 that you think would be a good mirror for each other that way?
Ooh, that's a really great question.
Mhm.
I would probably go with maybe see, this is tough because Cal Scarata is awesome because he's the dad of all of the clone commandos, at least in Legends.
Legends, yeah.
But and we've seen so much of, not to say that, Boba Fett, we love Boba Fett, but I mean we had the book of Boba Fett, so we don't need more. Not that we don't need more, but
Yeah,
you
well,
know
they
what
did
I mean.
Ahsoka for crying out loud.
Right,
So,
true, but honestly, I mean, I would love to see something even along the lines of some of the clans. So looking maybe back into Sabine's past, maybe a little bit more.
okay.
Um, I'm not sure. That's a hard one because there's so many great Mandos out there that I would have to think about that one a little bit. And I know that's a cop out, but do you have any in mind?
Well, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't do Boba Fett and Cad Bane.
Oh yeah,
Have
that's
I
true.
mean, because we saw how that all ended, but we could have stories about how their journey seemingly started from similar places, but then diverged,
Hmm.
and some of the lessons that they learned along the way that brought them to that final confrontation.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, we got a lot of that in the Book of Boba Fett, but there were stories, or you could really make it interesting and do like Jango Fett and then Boba Fett
Oh
afterwards.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's true. Yeah, that would be cool too.
mhm,
Yeah, and I just think like a Tales of the Old Republic would be a lot of fun, and because they are legends, but yet there's still a lot of canonical things in there. So something like a Revan, because everyone
mhm.
loves Revan, you know what I mean? And like you said, maybe not Bane, but someone else, in that
Yeah,
Old Republic vein
yeah.
would be
See,
cool.
I don't think the Tales of series are where you introduce new characters though, because they
Mhm.
are shorts that they are dependent on some familiarity with the character that you're involved with there.
That's a good point. Mhm.
So that's my only pushback on that idea. But that's not to
Mhm.
say you couldn't do an animated series about the Old Republic.
Mhm.
Like I said, shoot, they did the Acolyte, which is towards the end of the High Republic era. There's no reason they couldn't do some sort of shows tied to the Old Republic if they do a publishing initiative around
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's my next prediction, and that has to do with celebrations. I know we've talked about this recently, but I've got some ideas. Of course, next year is Japan. We just had a London, and then in 2022 was the last stateside. I think we get back-to-back celebrations in uh, 2026 and 2027. The one in 2026 will be to promote potentially the Mandalorian and Grogu, or the new Jedi Order movie, or both to that extent, maybe celebrating depending on when it comes out or when the celebration happens, could be celebrating the Mandalorian and Grogu and looking forward to the new Jedi Order. And then, of course, they kind of have to have one in 77 or in 27, I should say, to celebrate the 5th anniversary of A New Hope that came out in 77. The celebrations will be held one will be in Anaheim and the other one's going to be in Orlando. There'll be tie-in events at the theme parks. And along those lines, at some point, we'll get an announcement to an expansion of the Galaxy's Edge portion of the parks with a third attraction.
Oh, nice. I like that. I like it a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So I agree with you. We're going to come back to stateside for celebration for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking that in 2027, to, coincide with the 1977 release of A New Hope, that because that was the very first movie, that they're going to go back to the very first site of the first celebration, which was in Denver, Colorado. So that's my prediction for 2027.
Do they
Probably not
have?
right,
I
but
was gonna say, what are the convention facilities like? Because the
I
celebration's been
have
a long
no
way
idea.
since the muddy field and tents.
It has indeed. But come on, there's got
It's
to be some stuff
bold. I'll give you that.
there. Bold move. There we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I honestly, as far as like prediction goes, it's more
Uh-huh.
of I'm manifesting this because I just think it would be super cool, to bring things back full circle. But I agree with you. We're definitely
Mhm.
going to have at least one stateside, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were back to back, like you said, just
Mhm.
because the fact that they haven't been stateside for so long, and there's so many of us that are going to be thirsting for that. Plus, we're going to have all this content, so we're going to have these movies, and we're
Yeah.
going to have hand in hand. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I just I think they're going to want to have a big event. Now, what might throw a wrench into that is if the current setup for D23 continues to take off the way it is, because they did a lot of Star Wars stuff at D23 this year. So it's possible that that might be the flaw with my prediction, and that one of those years they just celebrate Star Wars at D23. We'll see.
I
Well, give
hope
me one
not,
more before we wrap
honestly.
this up.
Oh, anything I want. Let's see. I'm gonna go with video games.
Okay.
And so, obviously we're gonna get the third and what's supposed to be the final edition in the Jedi Fallen Order. I call it Jedi Fallen Order series, but the Jedi series.
Hmm.
And from that, I think that there may be some spin-off games that actually come out of that. So I would love to see, something along the lines of, a Mirren or a Night Sister type of video game centric sort of thing, because the Night Sisters have been so incredibly, focused on in a lot of the different things that we've seen. So I think that would be cool. Um, or, from that aspect too, having Cal Kestis make the jump into live action from that video game.
Hmm. My video game prediction is that we're going to get one set after the Rise of Skywalker and before the events of the New Jedi Order, that will feature a new character that is suddenly coming into Force powers, and you potentially could meet someone like Rey in there in order to develop those powers, and then that'll be kind of a tease as to what goes on to that movie.
Fun. Yeah, I think that's a great one.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, that's fun. So I'm gonna have to write these down when I get this show. And so put
Yeah,
them
we'll
in
see if
put them
we're
in a little
right.
time capsule somewhere, and then when we get to episode 1600 in 5 years, we can pull it out and see what we were right about and what we were
Oh,
not.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
Yeah. It's been quite a
Hey,
ride these 5 years, that's for sure. I mean, I
yeah.
can't believe it's been 5 years. It's insane. And I tell you, we need to have another Star Wars celebration stateside as soon as possible, because that's the only time you and I get to see each other like in real life, person.
I know, I
And
know. We've talked about going to some other con, and
right.
just never been able to make it work because we got busy lives. So
Yeah, indeed.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we just keep coming to you from our opposite ends of the galaxy, and that's okay.
yeah. In 5 years, we're not getting any younger. It'll be interesting how we get around to
Shh,
celebration.
shh. Yeah, yeah. Family predictions in 5 years. I'll probably be a grandma. Did I just
Oh
say
wow.
that? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be a grandparent in 5 years. A lot of things would have to change,
Oh,
uh,
goodness gracious.
but we'll see. Okay. All right. Well, then, just want to say thank you all of our listeners for joining us for this 800th episode. And whether you are a new listener or you've been around since episode 1 or anywhere in between, we appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for the reviews that you've left on Apple Podcasts, that you've left on other platforms. Thank you for your comments on our YouTube channels, such as they are. That's been an interesting place to connect with people. Thank you to all of those that have left a comment on our Facebook page, Twitter, which we don't use so much anymore, and then again, on Instagram, who liked our
Mhm.
images and shared our content with everybody else. It's meant a lot to us, and we do it because we like talking about Star Wars once a week. But I think I speak for both of us. We get a kick that other people want to hear what we have to say, and so that's been a lot of fun.
Definitely.
But again, for those of you who have stumbled upon this is your first episode, what can I
Welcome.
say? Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
We do get more into content and news on the average show, and if you want to check that out, hit that subscribe button and do all of the podcast things: rate, subscribe, like, share on your podcatcher of choice. And then you can go check out the history of the show, and there's a lot of it at this point over on retrozap.com. We are a proud member of the Retros App Podcast Network, which features other shows such as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, Warp Trails, and a bunch of other legacy shows, including our own podcast, Starship Sabers and Scoundrels. So, go check all those things out. And then explore our other homes on the internet. Jay, you want to remind everybody what those are?
Absolutely. So we are on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. We still maintain our X, even though we don't use it all that often. But I will say we've gotten some really kind words over on Instagram from some of our, I say family because our listeners that have been with us all this time are definitely like family. So we certainly do appreciate that, as well as all of our guests that have been on the show. For all of these 800 episodes, we couldn't have done it without you. So if you'd like to continue to share those out, once again, Facebook, Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also have our Pinterest boards with tons of fun ideas. And then we have our 2 YouTube outlets. So we have the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So please head over to both of those, like, subscribe, and share those out. And we're also on every other platform that you can think of. So we're on Audible and Spotify and basically everything in between. And if you would like to show off your fandom for Podcast Stardust, we also have a TeePublic store, and we have 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of things from t-shirts and sweatshirts to coffee mugs, tote bags, even baby onesies. So head on over to that link in our show notes and you can pick something up from there.
All right, Jay, you've been big into cosplay over these last several hundred episodes. You want to remind everybody where they can find your latest cosplay adventures?
Yes, and so I actually started my J.Snips cosplay on Instagram back in 2021. So I am 3 years strong with that at this point. So the podcast is older than my cosplay account. But you can catch me over there as Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, as well as the Fourth Sister, and my original concept Mandalorian, as well as tons of other things. So I go off the Star Wars beaten path for a while sometimes too, and do things like weird Barbie. So you never know what you're going to find over there. And I've got several appearances coming up here in November and December. So to catch up on all the fun, check out J.Snips cosplay on Instagram.
All right. So upcoming on the show on Wednesday, we're going to be celebrating Halloween by looking at Kevin Scott's Tales from the Rancor Pit. And then on Friday, we will be getting into Star Wars news as we do every week. So once again, thank you all for listening to episode 800 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great week. And until next time, may the Force be with you.